Hello, everyone. Good evening. Today is August 19th, and this is the very first class in a series of 5 titled Cosmic Heart, Your Guide to Astrology and Relationships. So I'm so glad to have you here, whether you're on live or whether you are watching this replay. My name is Jaime Fleres, and I am the founder of Sacred Heart Healing Arts, which you could find at sacredhearthealingarts.com. So happy to have you as part of this community and to have you gathered here in this particular community, this container in Facebook, where I'll be sharing a lot of free resources, a lot of healing arts resources. So we begin first with astrology, and this is our first class around astrology and relationships. So if you haven't already, if you're in this group and you haven't already, you might check out a post below, which is about how to access your chart. So my intention for this series is to make it really accessible to you, really applicable to you, and so that you can actually use this information. So I'm not just talking at you and giving you a bunch of facts or ideas about astrology, but that you can actually take what you learn here and apply it to your life and to your relationships. So if you haven't already, check out how to look at a chart. It's just I think it's a 10-minute video. I don't know, it's been like a week since I posted. I can't remember how long it is, but it basically gives you a very high level but thorough explanation of how to look at your chart and how to see how to read the words, what the symbols mean on your chart, so that you can at least go in and figure out what sign your different planets are in and in what house. Pretty basic, but also more complex if you haven't been exposed to this before. So there's no need for you to come in with any astrology knowledge in order to go through this series. This series is really meant for you to be able to take away some things that you can use to really benefit your life. So one of the reasons I love shamanic astrology so much is that it has really enhanced my relationships. And I talked about that in a previous video, so I won't go into that. But when I have the insight into somebody's chart, like a beloved's chart, from in my life, in my experience, I've noticed that it really enhances our relationship. I can see them more clearly. I can understand who they are, who they came to be, and how to support that, how to really honor that in them. So without further ado, let's go into tonight's topic. So tonight we're going to be talking, I'm going to adjust this just a little bit. Tonight we're going to be talking about the moon and the south node. So those are two places, neither of which are planets. We'll call them just celestial bodies. The moon and the south node, actually the node is actually a point, a place that is actually related to the moon. So we're really talking here about, well, I'll go into what the moon is, but this is sort of the beginning place. And what I'd like to do really in each of these classes, each of these videos, is to share with you what the impact is on our personal lives of these different aspects or these different elements of our chart, and then how we show up in relationship with them. So it's always self first, and then how do we bring that into relationship? So like I said, if you haven't already found your chart, go grab it, but otherwise you can just listen through this and come back to it if you want. Okay, so the basics. So we're going to talk about the moon first. So before we really go into that, I've explained it in another video, but it's worth repeating here just to have a solid foundation, is that in shamanic astrology, we really see, so there's 12 signs in the zodiac, right? There's 12 signs, 12 houses, 12 signs. And we see each of those signs as archetypes in shamanic astrology. And we also sometimes refer to them as mystery schools or tribes. So these are like schools almost, like we come to Earth School and we go to different universities, and there's the Libra University and the Aries University, etc. Right? So as a soul, if you want to adopt this idea, as a soul, we come into multiple lifetimes, and we want to, or even within one, we want to experience all of the archetypes eventually, right? We want to have mastery over all of them. We want to be and experience life experiencing itself through us, all of those things in totality, right? We want to continue to learn and evolve and experience new things as a soul. So, but one of the things, and this will tie, I promise, is that we come in to learn new things. So we come into mystery schools that we haven't experienced before in this lifetime, or in our lifetimes. But if we were just to come in fresh, I mean, Earth School can be a rough place sometimes, can't it? If we were just to come in fresh, just like trying to learn new skills without any previous, like without any of the skills we've already developed as a soul, it could feel kind of harsh. So the way my teacher describes it, which I really appreciate, is that because of grace, because the universe is like a loving place, we come in, we're given the opportunity to come in with 2 archetypes that we're already really good at. So this is a place where we can be in our comfort zone. So we're already really good at a couple of the archetypes that we come in with. One of those is the moon, the other is the south node. So these are the 2 aspects, places in our chart where we have already, thank you, Caroline, we have already had a lot of experience, right? So let's just pause and we'll just say first, what does the moon represent? So in short, the moon represents our past tribe, our past mystery school. It can be connected to our lineage. It can be connected to our tribal or ancestral history. It can either be our genetic or our energetic lineage, our soul lineage, our light lineage, or our actual physical human DNA lineage. It can also represent past life themes for us. So we see that in shamanic astrology as the moon represents our past lives. So it can represent the past, the old god or goddess that we have been in the past. So in short, the moon is our past, right? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean, so if I were to say like, oh, my moon is in Libra, which it is, it doesn't necessarily mean that like Libra is the only school I've ever studied in as a soul. It just means that I'm coming in with those particular skills from my past to use in this lifetime. So, you know, even in shamanic astrology, we say that the moon doesn't necessarily fully encompass our past life experience, but it acts like it does in this lifetime. So it acts as if it is the only major archetype, in addition to the south node, that we come in having previous experience with, right? The other things that the moon represents in more Western astrology, which we also use in shamanic astrology as well, is that, okay, so every planetary body, or equivalent, is associated with a sign. So the moon is associated with Cancer. So Cancer is a water sign. Cancer is connected to the emotions, to nurturing, to the mother, capital M mother, to our mothering and being mothered. So it also has that aspect of it as well. The other thing the moon represents is our personality. So much of our chart, so I talk about the birth chart as like our soul map, right? It's like you know, we can have this idea that before we were born, we sat down and we said, okay, I want to come in with these things that I'm already good at, and I want to study in these schools, you know, like I want to really focus on learning how to become a better Taurus, or just not even how to become a better, but how to fully experience and explore the mystery school of Taurus, or how to fully explore the mystery school of Sagittarius. So we come in with intentions. So much of the chart expresses the intentions of our soul, but the moon and the south node actually express past life. So this is actually our innate traits. So we see a lot of the personality in the moon sign. And in fact, you know, it's interesting in our culture today, when we're asking somebody, oh, what's your sign, right? Like kind of looking at like, oh, what's your personality? Like what kind of general assumptions can I make about who you are? We ask about the sun sign. But in Roman times, in ancient Roman times, when someone said, hey, what's your sign? They were actually asking about your moon sign, because they understood then that the moon actually has the most impact on the personality and can say the most about what a person is like in that sense. So it does. It reveals the personality. This can include our habits. This can include our attitudes toward life, toward people, toward relationships, toward everything, our expectations about how life works. It can represent our comfort zones where we feel safe. Again, this is something we come in already having developed familiarity and mastery over. It tends to be like our default operating mode. So it's where we kind of come in and start from in our lifetimes. Now, it can also represent our addictions. So we can get addicted to the moon. We'll talk about that a little bit more. We can actually get addicted to kind of staying in our moon archetype and not growing into the things that we intended to grow into in this lifetime. So it can also reveal some of our wounds. We can see some wounding in relationship to the moon. So sometimes we can see the wounds around the moon by looking at dynamic aspects to outer planets. Now, that might be like, what did you just say? That's a little bit more of a tangential, weedy sort of bit there, but just know that there are aspects that we can look at in the chart that can reveal some tenderness, some wounding around the moon in our past. Okay, so we've got this lineage, this tribal ancestral sort of piece of the moon. We've got the personality that the moon represents. We also have, so because we come in really good on the soul level, we have mastery in this archetype. It often is the place where we have skills, strength. Some of our finest qualities are our moon qualities. So again, we have mastery here. So we can use them. But what we want to do is we want to be in right relationship to our moon. So we want to harness the power of our, thank you, Caroline. We want to harness the power of our skills and this mastery that we come in good at, but we can't just totally rely on it. We can't just stay in that zone, right? So two things can happen if we get kind of stuck in our moon and operating from our moon. We can be compelled to go beyond it, either through boredom, like doing our moon stuff is just kind of gets boring, or we can find that we just actually, there's like a law of diminishing rewards that happen. Like we can do our moon so well, and yet nothing good seems to come of it in this lifetime because we actually aren't meant to just do our moon in this lifetime. So that can sometimes happen when we're too kind of stuck in our moon archetype. So what does this mean? I want to give an example. So if you were, and sometimes we have to look at this in context. So if you came in with a Cancer moon and you were like, man, nurturing and loving, unconditional love and just like mothering is like so my comfort zone. That's all I want to do. And, you know, so you have that moon in Cancer, but let's say you have your rising, or if you're a woman, your Venus, or if you're a man, your Mars in Aries. So that means actually, and this is going into some future series, but it means that you came in good at this Cancer, good at this nurturing and this mothering, but that you actually came in with the intention to learn and grow through another mystery school, which is Aries. And Aries is very like rugged individualist. Like, so if, let's just say this person just like stays in there nurturing and that sort of thing, they could be like the best nurturer, the most loving, mothering kind of person. And they might not feel like they get many returns, like any reward for it. They're not really fully acknowledged for that because they're not actually meant to stay there and do that. They're meant to grow into that Aries archetype and the other archetypes that we call more progressive aspects of the chart. Okay, so we want to get in right relationships. We want to use these skills to help us in the new schools that we signed up for in this lifetime, okay? Before we get into how this applies to relationship, and I want to give a couple more examples, and we'll also talk about the South Node, I just want to talk about layering in the house. So there are each, you know, when we look at the wheel of the astrology chart, there's like the segments of the wheel, right? The spokes, and then each one has like, there's a segment, like a pie slice, right? Each of those are the houses. So we can also look, when we look at a chart, at what house the moon is in, and the house gives us an indication of, can give us an indication of where in our lives, because that's what the houses do, they show us where in our lives maybe perhaps we're playing out our moon. So for example, if our moon was in the 6th house, which is the house of Virgo, sacred work, service, we might find that we're really expressing our moon in our work. If it's in the 10th house in Capricorn, in the sign that's in the house that's associated with Capricorn, and career, we might see that we're really expressing some of our moon traits there in work, and it's different kinds, like a different related to work. If it's in the 1st house, we might see that it's like really where we express ourselves. So anyway, again, some of this stuff can get a little weedy, but I do want you to just be aware of that. So now in these series, I'm not going to be able to go through every archetype, every sign, every planet, every house in detail. But if you have questions like, oh, my moon is in the 4th house, what does that mean? Or my moon is in Virgo, what does that mean? Please feel free to post a comment, and even if it's after this video goes live, feel free to post a comment and I'd be happy just to touch base. If it's a quick response, if it's something longer, like, can we look at my chart and really dive in, then let's schedule a reading together, even if it's a shorter, like a mini reading. And you can do those over on my website. Anyhow, back to it. Okay, so the moon. So we have the moon. It's about our lineage. It's about our past. It's about personality, our strengths, how we're going to use it and support us, but we're going to move beyond it in this lifetime, right? So how does this come into relationship, right? 15 minutes into my series here, how does this relate to astrology and relationships, which is what this is about, right? Well, boy, if the moon represents your personality, then isn't it so helpful to understand and have insight into your own kind of default comfort zone as well as your partner's? So that's why we look at the moon here first, is that it can really help to see what our set point is. So I just want to come to my notes about the moon and relationships. Yeah, so the moon can also indicate what level and kind of experience we've had in past relationships. So for example, if your moon is in Libra, like mine is, that indicates a lot of experience with relationships, with conscious equal partnership. Like on the soul level, we might say I've come in with mastery at that. So, but conversely, perhaps someone with a Capricorn moon, that might indicate that person maybe hasn't had, has had a different kind of relationship experience. And Capricorn moon specifically can sometimes have trouble expressing their emotions. They might not have had that experience of emotional intimacy before. And so that can be an area of challenge for them in their relationship. So that can be revealed by the moon, right? A moon in Aries, like maybe perhaps that person is like really used to being on their own and really independent. I think same is true, Sagittarius, Aquarius, and Gemini are all these like free-spirited, kind of independent. They all have different qualities, those three, but they're used to being wild and free, and so their set point is going to have some need for freedom, some need for space. So when we know those things, when we understand our partner's moon or our own moon, we kind of know our set points, like where we've been in relationship, where we haven't been, where we feel comfortable, where we don't feel comfortable. So it can really help. It can also help to reveal our relationship mindset, right? Our habits, our expectations, our beliefs, our attitudes, right? We can see those revealed by the moon. We can also see those sources of comfort. So one of the things that we can know in relationship is that when our partner is stressed or out of balance, we can give them comfort by honoring their moon, by stroking their moon, we say. We can nurture them through the safety zone of their moon. Let me know if you need an example on that one. Okay, so, all right. We can also see, because the moon can be the place where we get addicted or the place where we can get stuck or feel wounded, is that we can also start to notice if in our partner, they're staying safe in their moon. And if in partnership you're in a situation where you're really championing each other's growth, you can know that about them. You can be aware of that and go, okay, they're really doing their moon here. I wonder if I can support them and encourage them in growing in these other ways that perhaps, based on their chart and based on what you know of them, they're wanting to grow into, right? So we can also help to facilitate, nurture, just support our partner's growth through knowing their moon. Okay, so that's a little bit about, so we talked about the moon, we talked about relationships. Let's also talk about, just briefly, let's talk about the South Node. So like I said, we have these 12 archetypes, right? And we come in good at 2. So one of them is our moon. The other one is the South Node. So I want to talk about the South Node. So the South Node is not actually like a star or a celestial body you could point to out in the sky, but it is related to it's the nodes of the moon, okay? So it is connected to the moon. So these two go together. So we have the South Node and the North Node, and they, depending on where they are in the chart, they're always opposite each other, right? They form an axis. We see that axis, we can see that axis as like a timeline, as a time track, the entire incarnational time track. We're moving from one pole to another, one archetype to the one that it exists at the opposite end. Not necessarily that they're opposites, but they lie in opposition to one another. So we go from the South Node, which is where we've been in the past, along the time track, to the North Node, which is where we're headed, right? So this is an archetype of intention, where we are wanting to go as a soul. The south node represents the past as well, just like the moon does. So the south node is a little bit different. So whereas the moon is the tribe that we have been in, the south node is the job we had in that tribe. Okay, so for example, I'll use my chart as an example. Some loud birds. So if I have a Libra moon and my south node is in Gemini. So Gemini is many things, but just to simplify, Gemini is the mind, Gemini is communication. So we might say, just on a really simple level, that I belong to the tribe of Libra, which is about relationships and partnerships and conscious equal relations and how we relate to others. And then I had the job in that tribe of the moon, of the Gemini. So I was the communicator, I was the teacher, I was the one who expressed in the tribe. I was the one who used, their mind, et cetera, right? So we can see moon is tribe, south node is the job you had in that tribe. Okay, so we start to get an idea of these two archetypes that we come in already good at. When we look at the south node, and I alluded to this a little bit in the how to read your chart piece, there's a little bit of a trickiness to this one. So if you go along and you find your south node, which actually looks like a horseshoe that's like this, the north node looks like this with a horseshoe. It's got they've got two circles at the ends in each of the signs. That's what it looks like in the chart. You'll look and you'll see the sign and you'll go, oh, my moon is my south node is in Aquarius. But what we actually want when we're looking at the nodes is the house that the nodes are in and the sign associated with that house, and not the sign that you see out there. So it's a little tricky. I'm going to say that one more time. So when you're looking at the south node, you want to look at the house that it's in, and then you want to look at what sign is associated with that house, and that's the sign you want to use when you're looking at the south node. Rather than the one that shows up right there. So for example, my south node is in the third house in Aquarius. It's in the sign of Aquarius, but it's in the third house. So we don't necessarily say that my south node is in Aquarius. We actually say, because the third house is associated with Gemini, that I actually have my south node in Gemini, and that it is flavored and colored and influenced by that Aquarius. So that gets a little weedy. Let me know if you have any questions about that. I'd be happy just to clarify what your south node is in. And the reason that we look at this house sign rather than just a straight sign is that the nodes stay in a sign for a year and a half. So that doesn't make it very specific to you, but it does change houses every few hours. So we get a lot more insight and more specificity to you and the time that you came into this life when we look at the house. So that is why. So like I said, the south node gives additional information about our lineage, describes our job. We talked about the time track. So we can look at this as the other archetype that we come in good at. So in the same ways, similar ways, we can see how it might affect us and what role it plays. So again, if we just come in and really anchor into our south node job, we're not necessarily progressing along that time track towards the north node, which is where we're headed. So we can also know that through the chart, we can get that insight. So you can look, when it comes to relationships, you can look at both the moon and the south node to see what you and what your person came in, or people came in to experience, having already been good at and using to move forward. Now, some people might ask, this is just coming to me, some people might ask, well, okay, so what if my moon is in Gemini, for example, but then I also have my sun in Gemini and my Mercury in Gemini and my Venus in Gemini, my Saturn in Gemini. This is somebody I know. What does that mean? It means that you do have past life experience with it, but you came to deepen that even further because all of those other planets I mentioned are more progressive house signs. They show intention for this lifetime. So it's like you came in good at it, but you also came to experience and deepen in that school again. It's almost like you got a degree from Harvard and then you're like, I'm going back. I want to do Harvard again. But you might say, you know, but I want to study abroad. I don't know why I'm picking Ivy League schools. I want to study abroad at Oxford, you know? So you might add some flavoring in. So you're like, yes, I want to deepen in this same archetype, but I also want to see what happens when we like, it's like a recipe. Like what happens if we throw in this and this too? And sometimes, so when we look at the whole of a chart, we can sometimes look at those new aspects and see how they play into deepening that original archetype. Again, not sure if that makes sense, but that's kind of my astrologer brain sort of giving you some additional information. But sometimes we do find that we have both past experience with something and the intention to carry that through and deepen it in this lifetime. Okay, so we're about 25 minutes. This is probably a good length here. I think we did justice. So okay, now you might be asking, let's say you do have your chart in front of you and you've located your south node and you've located your moon and you're like, okay, great. I have my moon in this and I have my south node in this. What does that mean, Jamie? Okay, so it would take me a while to go through each of the archetypes, and I would likely do so through each of the series. So what I invite you to do is go onto my website, sacredhearthealingarts.com. On the homepage, there is just a quick link. You just throw in your name and your email, and it'll send you the ebook that's associated with this series, the series that I'm offering you right now, and of which this is the first class. And go to, I think it's page, let's see, it's page 18. It's called The Archetypes. I have it right here. It's called The Archetypes by Sign chart. You can go to this. It has like, you'll see it's got like a chart of all the signs this side. It's weird because Facebook's backwards. Okay, so it's got all the signs and the archetype, like it's high level, right? This is not like a full reading by any means. It's sort of like a higher level synopsis of each one, but you can start to get an idea. And so you want to apply this to like, oh, okay, this is what I came in good with. All the things came in good at. All the things I said in this video that I will not repeat right now. So you can go there and actually find your sign, read a little bit about it, come back and ask me any questions you want. What does this mean? There are some things that you won't find on here. So I'm just going to give you a couple tidbits before I go. For example, a Gemini moon can sometimes indicate somebody for whom like the rules haven't applied to them in the past. Like they even say in shamanic astrology, like it's as if they had like diplomatic plates. Like the rules just don't apply. They kind of live by their own rules. So sometimes Gemini can come in that way where they're sort of like fancy free, like the rules don't apply to them. And when they don't have progressive Gemini, meaning they don't have it in their chart as a current life intention, they have to learn how to like get along like the rest of us do, you know? So that can be something that a Gemini moon might be experiencing, and that's not something you'll necessarily see in that chart. Aquarius, for example, when we come in with an Aquarius moon, it can sometimes indicate, and again, take or leave this, depending on your own personal beliefs about spirituality. By the way, not here to give you any dogma whatsoever. You can take or leave anything you like. I'm a very anti-dogmatic kind of person. But Aquarius moon can sometimes reveal that we come with higher dimensional consciousness. Like we're not necessarily from here. We're from higher dimensional consciousness, and we're coming into bodies on this earth so that we can do something in bodies that we can't do out of bodies to further the cause of humanity and the planet. And so sometimes Aquarius moon, that can be what Aquarius moon indicates. Leo moon, for example, can indicate that you might have had a past experience with being royalty or having like a royalty lineage with, you know, Leo representing the lion, the king, the queen archetype, right? So sometimes that can be literal, like in the past we've had that experience. So we might have to, again, similar to the Gemini, we might have to come in and experience like, well, what is it like if I'm not royalty in this lifetime? Like how are the rules different? How is life different? How do I have to like manage and navigate moving from that experience to this current life experience? So, and there are others as well, which we could get into, but those are just a couple of examples. So I think that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for tuning into the first series. Next week, we're going to talk about Mars and Venus. So these are two progressive aspects of our chart, or elements of our chart. Elements and aspects are tricky because those mean other things in astrology. But anyway, we're going to look at our inner feminine and our inner masculine. So who we came to be. So if the moon represents our old god or goddess, what is our current archetype, our intention to become as a god or goddess in this lifetime? Or just really, you can take it, if you don't like god or goddess, you can just say, who is the woman or the man that you came to be? And again, I recognize that's a little bit binary, but that's kind of the gist of it. We can get into the nuances and let it apply as appropriate to all people. But that's the gist. So that's where we're going next. I'll see you next Monday. I will send an announcement and give you the exact time next week. But until then, muse on this whole moon and south node thing. And I'd love to hear if you go, especially if you go and check out your chart, if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. If you want to just share any observations, like, oh my gosh, I looked at my husband's chart and or my partner's chart or whomever, and I noticed that the moon thing this and this makes sense because blah, blah, blah. I would love to just share and receive those as well. So I hope this has been in service. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching this series. And I'll tune in with you next week. So thanks so much. Bye.